It's part 2 of our conversation with legendary drummer Charlie Morgan. I'm John Beaudin from Rocky Stream Music. Questions. Yeah.
I've got one here. What music legend calls you Charlie Warley? and what is your favorite story about her?
Kate Bush.
Okay.
Charlie Warley. But it came from the sound engineer, Hayden Bendel, who worked with Kate a lot. And I would come in and do sessions, and he'd say, "Hello, Charlie Warley." And so Kate got that, and she actually signed the Hounds. She gave me a boxed set LP of the Hounds of Love, which I have back in my storage in the UK. And it actually says on it, "To Charlie Warley, lots of love from Katie Waity."
See, everyone has preconceived ideas about Kate Bush. I mean, I was on to her music right from the beginning, but my biggest thing, and you tell me, I kept going, she's got to be she's probably like one of those Joni Mitchell characters where she's eccentric and looks at things differently, but is she like that?
Yeah, but there was a certain amount of suburban normality about her as well. I mean, she came from a suburban family in the southeast of London. And, her dad was a doctor. Her mother was this absolutely wonderful Irish woman, Hannah. She would bring us a cup of tea. "Would you like a cup of tea, Charlie?" She'd bring this tray of tea with biscuits in the middle of a session, We're trying to work out the drum track on Jig of Life or something, and she'd be walking in. She was an absolute sweetheart, and her dad was just a total. He was a doctor. He was a local doctor, and he was a hippie, complete hippie. And then her brother Paddy was a kind of multi-instrumentalist, and then her older brother Jay was a journalist, and he made friends with Dave Gilmour, which is how Kate got signed up. I mean, I don't know if you know the story, but she was incredibly shy when she was 14 or 15. But Jay heard her playing piano and singing. And anytime anyone went in the living room, she would stop. And so he called up Dave Gilmour and said to Dave, "Look, you've got to come and hear my sister. But there's the caveat is we can't actually let her know that you're coming to listen to her." So apparently they listened through the living room door to her, and that's what got Dave Gilmour interested. And then he paid for some sessions, and EMI signed her on a development deal. But The Man with the Child in His Eyes is one of the songs that they did live with a full orchestra, with Andrew Powell conducting, and that was one of her first demos that got her the EMI record deal.
So how was it decided whether you were drumming on a song or Stuart Elliott was drumming on a song? How did that work out?
I think Kate decided it. And on a couple of occasions, I think Stuart and I both tried bits of the track. And there are actually a couple of tracks, I think, where we're both playing different things on it. Mm-hmm. But I think really, Stuart was on the first two albums. I ended up on the second album, Lionheart, and then carried on. But I was a member of the band in '78, but in '79 I left the band to join the Tom Robinson band, the melodic punk band, and I toured the whole of North America and Europe with the Tom Robinson band. So it wasn't until a few years later that I came back into the fold.
I should mention that Jerry Murat, I just interviewed him, and he was saying that as far as Wells in Orleans, he says if Wells was still drumming today, he'd be known as one of the great ones, because he says he learned a lot just from him.
Yeah, Wells. Yeah, as a character, Wells was pretty wild.
Yeah.
He died in London, actually, of a drug overdose. He died while he was in London. And it was about a year before I met Elton, and I was a top session player, and he was playing with Meatloaf. And I got the phone call to go and do an audition. And I went down and I got offered the gig. And I asked around, and a friend of mine just said, "Don't do it. He doesn't pay. His checks bounce. He's completely unreliable. Don't work for Meatloaf." And actually, soon after that, I did the Gary Moore, Phil Lynott thing, and we toured the whole of the summer of '84 then. with Gary Moore and Phil Lynott doing TV shows and concerts. And then in '85, I met Elton. So it kind of worked out for the best, really.
Okay.
Wow. Now, Charlie, did you get to perform live with Kate Bush, or was the magic mainly done in the studio? And if so, on which of her albums?
I never performed with her live. Well, no, actually, that's not true. I did some TV shows with her in the early days after The Kick Inside came out. I started by doing TV shows. I played on, which albums did I play on, you're saying? Asking?
Just asking which albums you played on.
Yeah, I played on Lionheart. And then the next album was Hounds of Love, which I kind of shared with Stuart. We did Hounds of Love, Sensual World, and The Red Shoes.
Mm-hmm. But it makes sense what you said about Kate, the fact that she could cover that much ground. Because I kept going, wow, I would have, if I was her, I would have never released that. But man, I'm glad she did, you know?
Yeah, that's, that was the only way she could do it. It's like Joni Mitchell, for instance. I mean, she really, I think she dictated what she was going to do next. And the record label just had to hang on for dear life. It was, but you've got to have a very high profile and be very, very strong-willed to be able to do that, because otherwise the A&R department are just going to try and change what you do.
Was there defining moments? For instance, I know as a drummer there was a point, and as a hockey player, there was a point where I said, "This dog won't hunt. I'm not going to be able to do it. I'm not going to get to that level." And I've got too many other things going on. But was there a point, Charlie, that you thought, yeah, I'm going to be able to do this for a living?
Well, yeah, it's funny because, I mean, I had a friend at school whose dad actually played cello and his uncle played viola on all the Beatles stuff. They were part of that ensemble. And he was a friend of mine. He'd learned cello. His dad had taught him cello. This is the same guy, by the way, that taught Paul Buckmaster, Elton's arranger, cello. Because Paul Buckmaster was a cellist. So here's a guy called Peter Halling, and my friend was Rod Halling, and we were at school together. And I think when I was about 13 or 14, he'd been playing guitar for a while, and he phoned me up one day and said, "Did I know anyone at school that played drums?" And I said, "I'll do it." And I had played a drum kit when I lived in Switzerland in the late 60s. I had a friend of mine who had a whole band set up in his basement, and I literally just got down and sat on the kit and started playing a 4/4 beat, and the guy said, "Wow, that took me 6 months to master."
Well, wait a minute. You must have been tapping before that. Weren't you tapping at all off drums before that or not?
Not really, not until I was 14 or 15 or 69, 1970, I suppose.
Wow.
Not at all. I mean, my friend in Switzerland said, "How on earth did you get the independence for that?" I said, "I don't know. I just did what I saw Ringo doing, on the Beatles videos." And so he said, "Well, you've got a natural ability," and I didn't think any more of it. And then my friend Rod phoned me and said, "Did I know a drummer?" And I said, "I'll do it." And we formed a garage band, and we played a number of charity concerts at my school. School was very artistically minded. Again, I was very lucky in that respect. It's the same school that all kinds of actors and musicians came out of. It's it was a very artistically minded school, and so we were encouraged. We did these charity concerts at the school. But Hugh Grant was 5 years below me at school.
Wow.
And Alan Rickman was 10 years ahead of me at the same school. And there are a number of people, personalities that came out of my school.
So indirectly, you were in Love Actually. I can see that right now. Indirectly. So
yeah, Hugh Grant was a very naughty boy. He was 5 years younger than me, and I gave him detention one time.
Is that right? But
yeah.
You know what? And normally that would be a claim to fame for one person. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, I was a prefect at the school, and he was a little scruffy teenager, and he was running in the corridor, and I said, "Grant, come here." Detention. He went, "Oh, Morgan."
Wow. So how do you jump from that? Like, when was the first big gig that you had?
Well,
The bragging gig.
Okay, all the way through my school years, I had no concept of becoming a professional. But by the time I turned 17, I was playing in a bunch of bands in pubs throughout London.
Yeah.
Summer of '73, I was playing. I was in quite demand. I was playing in various different bands on the pub circuit. And I went back to school in the autumn of '73, and I was still trying to play 4 or 5 gigs a week and do my last year of school. And the headmaster called me in and said, "Look, I think we've got a conflict of interests here." He said that my extracurricular activities were getting in the way of my schoolwork, and I said, "Well, I think my schoolwork's getting in the way of what I'm doing." And so we agreed to go our separate ways, and I left school. So I left school at the age of 18 and hit the road with a rock band. I was 18. They were all 24, 25 years old. And the first major gig we played the US Air Force bases in Germany. We played right away through Christmas into New Year and beyond. 6 nights a week, 5 hours a night, trekking around different NCO clubs. So I was playing a kind of little
Did you
America.
like it? Were you enjoying, at that spot in your career, were you enjoying it? Was it arduous? What was it like?
It was tough. I mean, I went to Germany a child, and I probably came back almost a man, shall we say. It was a learning process. It was a huge learning process, but I had a ball. I loved it, and the GIs were absolutely wonderful to us. I mean, they just took us under their wing, and they were, we weren't being very well paid, so we were barely making our money work in Deutschmarks. But these GIs were actually taking us into the PX stores, changing our money into dollars, and then we were buying stuff that was all subsidized, US government subsidized, in the PX stores, because they were GIs. They were going, "Oh, he's with us. Don't worry, he's with us."
Yeah.
So they looked after us for about 4 months over Christmas and New Year of '73 into '74.
And that's an interesting mindset too. Sorry to interrupt you. That's an interesting mindset too. That's that's brother to brother. They got your back, and if they like you, they got your back as well. I mean,
yeah,
that's a nice thing. That can be a very nice thing.
It was great. I mean, that was my first experience of America, if you like, albeit in Germany. But they were so great to us. I mean, they just treated us so well.
Sorry, someone just said I was there 69, 72. I don't know if that means anything to you.
No, I was 73, 74, so that was just prior to me.
We'll have more from our Friday night's live conversation with Charlie coming up next week. If you want to see the whole thing, it's at the very top of the description of this video, the whole interview. Make sure you comment on our video, subscribe to our channel, and share our videos. I'm John Beaudin from Rock History Music.